Hello, and welcome to the 6th edition of Shelter Sounds, a weekly series of conversations with American musicians and bands who have recently toured Russia. This series is coordinated by the U.S. Embassy and Consulates in Russia, the Forum for Cultural Engagement, and the American Center in Moscow. It is also being broadcast by the Library of Foreign Literature American Cultural Center. Today, we welcome back to Russia Sweet Megg and her jazz and Western swing band, Sweet Megg and the Wayfarers, who toured Russia in 13 different cities in October and November of 2019. The band draws inspiration from American jazz of the 1920s and 30s, the blues, and Western swing. So with us today are Sweet Megg on vocals and guitar. Megg is a New York City-based singer influenced by early blues singers and from her studies of jazz in Paris. She now spends half her time in Nashville, where she performs country and Western swing. Ryan Weissite on saxophone is a multi-instrumentalist, also based in New York City. He has toured the United States and Europe extensively with groups such as Pokey Lafarge, Sweet Megg, Titus Andronicus, and many others. Thor Jensen on guitar is a member of the Wayfarers, as well as the Stefan Rembel band, and is 1/3 of the avant-garde trio Brit Not Brit. He's also a member of the Knot Club of New York City. He just released a solo record of original material. And drummer and percussionist Chris Gelb can be found playing in a wide variety of musical groups in New York City, where he currently resides. He has become a specialist in the early drumming styles of the 1920s and 1930s. So welcome back to Russia virtually. I wanted to start by asking you all about your Russia tour. I know you visited, like I said, 13 different cities. So let's start with Sweet Megg. Could you just tell us a little bit about, some of your memories of your tour while you were here in Russia?
Yeah. So I think the biggest takeaway that was, I think, so profound about the whole trip was that we got to see such a wide variety of the country, which is, I think, really cool as an American. I mean, we don't get to really know much about the inner workings of Russia, and it was cool because we got to start in, up north by the White Sea, and then we were down in Moscow, and then we got to see kind of the provinces and go to Kursk and Orel, and then we got to go down to like a resort town in Gelendzhik near the Black Sea, and then we were in the far east in Vladivostok, and we're also all the way like by Germany and Kaliningrad and Poland, and it was like it was very interesting to see how diverse the country was, and in some ways how similar to America that is, because America is so diverse. You go one area, it feels like different countries, and at the same time too, the differences. Like, I think driving around the countryside in the Far East was really interesting. We driving along a highway that was like completely just very rural, and seeing what rural Russia was like was very interesting for us because it was very different than like rural, the rural south of America or something. um I think specific for me, like the most wonderful experience that I had was when I got to really meet people one on one. I think when we were in Moscow, I got to meet a lot of young people, which was really cool because we went to the Kozlov Club, and I remember I got to meet this one singer there, and she was so excited to meet an American jazz vocalist because she was studying jazz vocals. And I ended up, she asked me, she was so cute, but she was too scared to ask me, and her friend asked if I would give her a lesson, and I ended up meeting her at like some kind of it was some kind of practice space in Moscow, and we kind of just had spent an hour going through jazz singing and the American tradition, and it was so cool because she was so fascinated by it, and I could tell she really wanted to understand more from an insider perspective, and it was like a cool kind of cultural bridge between us, and that was really a profound experience. And I think also playing in Moscow was really cool because I got to there were a lot of English speakers, and unfortunately I don't speak any Russian, so I was able to really talk to the audience. And um, I did one song where I kind of talk about the differences between cultures, and it's kind of about understanding the other. And after the performance, a lot of people came up to me and they're like, yes, this is important, we are the same, and this is, we are so similar, it's silly the things that we fight about and all that. And that was all, those kind of experiences were what I really went home with. And just the people, that was what was so fascinating for me, really, I think.
Yeah, thanks. And I know, Chris, you had mentioned that you had a great memory in Vladimir. Could you share with us your thoughts, your memories of Vladimir?
Yeah, sure. Well, for me, I think, well, traveling to Russia in the first place was so special because I've never left North America. I've been to Canada before from the US, but I've never been overseas. And so most of Russia, I mean, it was just so fascinating to see how these old societies, these old countries, like the architecture and just the history behind everything. So um, seeing Vladimir was like the ultimate history lesson too. Just seeing the Assumption Cathedral, the just all the older buildings. Because in America, it's not that old of a country comparatively. So just to see, just to know how much has gone down in that country, and you can see it in the roads and the buildings. And um, Vladimir was just special in that to me. Also, I think Kaliningrad was a beautiful city in that regard too, because you could see the different cultures of Europe colliding there, the different church styles, the different buildings and food and all that. So
Yeah, and I'm glad I've heard your bandmates talking about your trip, and I think I've heard similar stories of just being able to appreciate the culture and the architecture of these 13 different cities that you saw, and appreciating the differences even within Russia. So yeah, I'm glad that you're appreciating that. We want to start by showing a video the Sweet Megg made for our Russian audiences. So we'll go ahead and watch this video so the audiences that didn't have a chance to see you can get a sense of your style. And then we'll talk a little more about your style of jazz, of swing, and Americana. So let's go ahead and watch the video.
One, two, three, four. Won't you let me down gently? My bones are made of sand. You drop me from this high up, never stick to land. Won't you let me down gently? My bones are made of sand. Leaning over gently, falling down again. So I'm gearing up, break this heart completely, and sew it up. Try a second time. So if you find someone to love, won't you leave out this heart of mine? Won't you break the ice gently so don't fall in and drown? My heart can't take the cold, my ears can't take the sound. Won't you break the ice gently so don't fall in and drown? I prayed for a prince, and then I got a clown. So I'm giving up, break this heart completely, then sew it up, and try a second time. So if you find someone to love, won't you leave out this heart of mine? Oh, won't you stop looking down at me so sweetly, please? I got somewhere I gotta be, oh, but I'm wanting you. Won't you drop me at the next stop? I can walk home from there. Those eyes, you know I wouldn't dare. Won't you drop me at the next stop? I can walk home from there. But when you look that good, can't help but stare. So I'm giving up, break this heart completely, and sew it up. Try a second time. If you find someone to love, won't you leave out? When you find someone to love, won't you forget about? When you find someone to love, won't you leave out this heart of mine? Leave out this heart of mine.
So amazing song. I especially love that line, I wanted a prince, but I got a clown. Tell us, Meg, a little more about the song. Is it original? And also, how would you characterize the song, the style? Because I've read a lot about your work and a lot of the reviews, and people can't quite pinpoint what style of music do you play. It seems to defy a time or a specific genre.
I think that's something I'm struggling to define myself, but I'm trying to define it. I think that one I've been working on a lot. That's an original one. I've been working on a lot of originals lately because I'm trying to make all my future records be all original, and I am trying to find a consistent sound. So with that one is that one of the ones where I'm going to try to record it all a little bit more Americana feeling, but mixed with a bit of jazz. Like I hear a lot of horns being in that one, and um, but I think that's where I'm trying to live right now. I'm trying to focus the music a bit more into like a melange of like Western swing and jazz because I like playing with the horn players, but I love the folk country writing and melody and those kind of more of arrangements. So that's what I'm trying to make going forward. I think the next records will be a bit more Americana country feeling with a little hint of jazz in that there'll be horn arrangements and stuff. So I guess that's what it's going for.
Yeah, I think it's amazing music, and I heard a lot of it when you were here in Moscow, and it's unique, and I think that's what's really special about it. And I thought maybe we could talk with you and your band members about your own background. How did you kind of get into music, and how did you decide to pursue a career? And how are you making this happen? Because you've become a really successful musician, doing this full time. So let's start with you, Meg, and then we'll move on to Ryan next.
But for me, I started out when I was very young. I mean, I come from a family of like artists and stuff, and I feel like I was constantly trying to rebel against my parents and go into something more legit, but they were always pushing me into the arts. And I started as a songwriter in high school, and I was kind of just doing the songwriting circles. And after high school, I started performing at like, songwriting houses and stuff in New York. And I had a couple different bands throughout college. And then I went to jazz school when I was in college because I kind of just wanted to be a better songwriter. And I was studying classical theory prior to that, and I didn't think that it related to songwriting as much as jazz would. So I was like, hey, why don't I learn jazz? And that's when I went to Paris. I also wanted to move to France, so kind of two birds, one stone. And when I came back to New York, I ended up falling in love with jazz and really enjoying playing it. And so when I came to New York, I was still pursuing my original music and a different career. And I was just doing jazz, and I was getting to know more people in jazz and trying to just hone those skills. And eventually for me, it was kind of like I was working in documentary film actually in this company. And then I was also doing jazz gigs just for money because I was just trying to make some money to survive in New York. And eventually I was just making more money doing jazz, and I was working too much, and I had to quit one of the jobs. And I was like, well, I guess I should just do music. It was kind of like, I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to go full time. And since then, I think I ended up doing a lot more jazz than I'd ever planned on doing because it just was in New York. It's just where you can make money, especially with the early jazz. There's just, especially in the beginning there was like that big, I don't know, fad of Great Gatsby parties and all that kind of stuff. So if you played 1920s jazz, there's a lot of private party gigs to do. So that's when I got more and more into it. And then as I got older in these past couple of years, I fell more into country music, started a country band, and then kind of realized like I hadn't been in touch with my songwriting and the whole reason I'd gotten into music in the first place. So now I've been moving away from the gigging, which is how I kind of made my living. It's not as romantic as it sounds. It's like bar gigs every night of the week pretty much, or hotel gigs, and it's working a lot playing music live. And I wasn't getting to do much creative stuff, so now I'm kind of working on making money with recording and making money online with videos and stuff so that I can start, I don't know, creating my own music again. And it's kind of done a full circle back to that now, especially with the quarantine. It's definitely reshaping the whole lifestyle that we have. But yeah, I guess that's how I kind of fell into it.
Yeah, we'll talk about the quarantine and how the pandemic has affected you as musicians. Do you have your album with you? I know you released an album recently, and so everyone can kind of see. I think it's beautiful. Your website and all the images that I see of you are just incredibly artistic. And
well, that makes me feel good. I tried and I want to do that. This is literally to get a photo out of me. It took 3 photo shoots, and this photo is when I was joking around and laughing, and so it's really difficult for me to get a good photo. So I'm glad you think that.
Yeah, it's very fitting of your style of music. Okay, so Ryan, let's hear about you. I know I read online that you took up the saxophone at age 10 to impress a childhood friend who had basically thought saxophone was the coolest instrument. But tell us a little more, how did you get into music? And, you've performed with some amazing people, including Dave Brubeck, I read. So let's hear a little more about your career.
Well, I neither one of my parents were musicians, but they were always very encouraging and supportive of my choice. And I started off with piano lessons when I was a kid, when I was like 6, and I liked them, but I wasn't like, it wasn't a huge part of my life. And then, yeah, at 10, I picked up saxophone because, as you mentioned, I wanted to impress a childhood friend of mine who said that saxophone was cool. And my mom coincidentally played saxophone in high school. So when I told her that I was playing saxophone, she was very excited. And then I don't know, there wasn't any one particular event or thing that pushed me into it. I just slowly over time realized, I started when I was 10. Over the next like maybe 4 or 5 years, I was like, oh, I really like playing the saxophone. It's something that I enjoy doing. My parents never had to be on my case to practice because I would just do it naturally because I enjoyed it so much. And so I just kept doing it, and I'd put in time outside of school, practice all the time, and I was getting better at it. And then I was 18 and I was graduating from high school, and I hadn't really thought about anything else as a potential career. I hadn't even gone through the usual like list of careers. And I was like, well, I'm pretty good at saxophone. I enjoy doing it. Let me just keep on that route. So it was almost like it was in a way, the path of least resistance in terms of just my immediate enjoyment in life. It was, and I stuck with it. And then I moved to New York after college, and was just working day jobs, trying to get gigs. And then it was 2012 when Meg and I met through the early jazz scene and decided to start a group together. And that was when it really shifted from something that I had hoped to do as a career to it actually became a career. We started getting a lot of work. I mean, Meg is an incredibly hard worker. She's really good at the organizational side of things, sending emails, getting photo shoots together, doing all the kind of the nitty gritty that I just never would do. And so the band that we started together just kind of took off. And as she said, it started to take up more and more time. And pretty soon I found myself with a career playing music, which was pretty exciting. And so I guess that's it. There was, like I said, there was no big thing. Like my parents didn't really push me into it at all. They supported me while I was doing it. They didn't push me into it. And I just kept doing it because I loved it. And I don't know. I was also just moved by music, and I've been kind of not surprised, but inspired on a daily basis at the healing power of music and how good it is at bringing people together, how good it is at touching you in an emotional way that nothing else can do. And so I'm just such a firm believer in it. I decided to make it the biggest part of my life possible. So that's it.
Yeah, it's really inspiring. I think what you noted is important to remember. Like, the success of your band doesn't happen naturally. There's a lot of hard work. There's a business side to it. But also, I feel like you have to have a passion for it, like what you just explained, because that keeps you going and motivated. And I think it comes out through your music.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Thor, let's talk with you next. I know you released an EP in 2019 last year. I listened to some of the tracks online. So tell us a bit about your background, your musical background.
Sure. Yeah. It's funny. I think we all, in a certain way, are going to have pretty similar stories. As far as I too started when I was 10, and I started because I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Because I mean, it's the guitar. The guitar is the coolest invention of the 20th century. That's just me. And it's, it slowly becomes one of those things that's it's just something that you have to do all the time. It's not even so much a choice to make it, you know what? I played all through as a kid, and I never thought about it that it's something that you could do as a job. I just thought of it as something that you did. It's just something I did. So when I started playing in bands when I was about 15 or 16 and playing a lot of gigs regularly, it was never the goal to make that my job, because I didn't understand that it could be my job. And so I sort of carried that mentality for a long time. After high school, I didn't go to college. I started teaching guitar lessons at a small shop, and playing gigs at night. And it was all original music. I played almost exclusively original music until I was maybe 30 years old, with various groups, either my own groups or my friends' groups. And I mostly played rock and roll or improvisational music, and didn't really even get into jazz until later on, when I started getting into Django Reinhardt. And the pursuit of that is what eventually led me to New York, to play with Stefan Remmel. And that's when it became an actual job, actual career for me. Before that, I was doing it full time, but I can't say that I was making enough money for it to be a job. And after starting with Stefan and moving to New York, and you start gigging, you start working, as Ryan and Meg said, it's an expensive place to live, and it's high stakes, and you have to work all the time. And that's sort of informally how I met all these guys, was just on a night off playing with other people at a jam. We all met together, and it was very informal, but it was fun. I find that it's easiest to get drawn to people that really let their personality come through with their playing, where it's not just you're playing notes, you're not just playing a song, you're playing your personality. You really get to contribute to the conversation. And I think that's one thing that brought us all together, is that's personally for me, that's something that I take a lot of pride in trying to do every time. So after a long time, all of a sudden, you wake up one day and you're like, wow, this is a career, and this is my career. And it feels amazing. Cause like Ryan said, the healing power of it, and the is its own motivator. You know what I mean? That's the pursuit, to make it your everything. So anyway, I did release an EP last year. I just feel like I got a little spacey, and I didn't mean to.
Your EP was amazing. You're also a singer. You did vocals and guitar on that, so that was really impressive.
Oh, thank you.
And your story kind of confirms like the stereotypes that us from outside of New York have of New York, that New York makes things happen for people. That's where you go to make it big, and you found success there. And the interesting thing though is that people come from everywhere to New York, and you bring your own kind of authentic flavor of music and experiences to New York. So there's still diversity there.
Oh yeah, there's a ton.
So let's move to Chris. I know you're from North Carolina, and I read a bit about your background, how you learned music from your grandfather and your parents, and I also read a bit about how you have become or developed a love of antique drums and instruments. So tell us a little more about your background.
Sure. Well, like you said, I grew up in a very musical family. My grandfather was a multi-instrumentalist. He played, most notably, he played a lot of piano in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. But he also played violin. He played organ. He used to play organ at skating rinks back in the day, when they would hire organists to play background music in ice skating rinks. So anyway, then my mother and my father, they're both jazz musicians. My dad plays saxophone. My mom's a singer. So basically, like what I usually like to tell people is I was either blessed or cursed to become a musician. So I've that's kind of growing up just totally surrounded by musicians in my life. I found it very natural to just being the thing that I wanted to do. I started playing piano when I was young. I played for I took lessons for probably about 8 years, from maybe 5 or 6 years old until I was about 12. But then I discovered rock and roll, and like Thor mentioned earlier, the guitar is the coolest instrument. Sorry, Ryan. But through rock and roll, then I saw the drums, and I was like, the drums are the coolest instrument. And I've bounced back and forth so much. But the drums kind of stuck, and I was playing a lot of rock and roll, playing a lot of original music with people in my hometown, recording with them. But then I kind of fell into jazz. I kind of spent most of my younger years pushing away from it because my parents did it. But when it came time to choose where I wanted to go to college, what I wanted to go to college for, it was just the natural thing for me. So I went to college for jazz studies, playing drums. But I also throughout college, and also my last years of high school, I went to an arts boarding school in North Carolina called North Carolina School of the Arts. And there I learned so much about classical music and classical percussion, timpani, marimba, and the like. So I developed a real love for classical music there, and that followed into college as well. But fast forward, I guess 4 years later, I graduated from college in jazz, and I had a friend that was moving to New York, and he said, "Hey, you want to come with me?" So I definitely owe a lot of me making it to New York to my friend Alex. But I got to New York, and like a lot of people, I was an aspiring musician, wanting to making my living just playing, but I had to make some other money somehow. So I was working in coffee shops, donut shops, whatever I could to kind of make ends meet. But through jam sessions and just other connections, I ended up meeting Megg, Ryan, and the rest of the band, and Thor later on. But as you make these connections and you play gigs through these other people you meet, you just keep on connecting the dots and weaving the web. And so I just found myself playing music, and I had to quit my other jobs because I just didn't have time to do it. So it definitely just kind of happened suddenly. And then you're just surrounded by doing the thing you love, which is, like everyone else has said, is kind of the goal. And it's, but like others have said as well, it grows tiring. It's a hard thing to do, playing these bar gigs every night or wherever you may go. New York can take you in some of the craziest situations too. So, but anyway, I guess that's just kind of where I've ended up. But along the way, I've continued to study and create other music outside of jazz, which is what I primarily make my money from. But I've been able to keep alive the guitar, the piano, what you name it. I try to. So.
Great. Yeah, I saw that you even have a piece on a soundtrack of a film. So you've made your mark. I like how you described it. You're weaving a web. It's a constant kind of work and kind of a network with other people. But to see you all make, a success of your dream is really inspiring, I think. So I want to ask Megg if she can play us a song. And then we have a number of questions that are coming in that we'll talk about. So Megg, would you be willing to share with us a song?
I'm out in a humid countryside kind of place, so let me just double check the tuning didn't go out on my guitar. I thought I would do another original song, just because honestly in quarantine I've been spending way more time practicing original songs than I am jazz songs. So I thought I'd do it there. This is a song that I wrote a long time ago, but I've rewritten it like 4 or 5 times because I liked the chorus a lot, and then but I hated the verses, and so I wrote like it over and over and over again. Then I finally, over quarantine, I feel like I finally wrote the song. I think it's done. We'll see if this one sticks. But here we go. Sat down by the bar till I was feeling low. Shows that there's some things even alcohol don't know. Sat down beside me, you bought me a beer. There's something in the way you sighed, made it quite clear that I need some loving. At least that's what I've been told, that the only thing I'm getting now is getting old, and so I'll buy you flowers, treat you like I should. I just hope you can love this woman, though I'm damaged goods. There's a woman in the corner, planting seeds that just won't sow. The room is filled with good friends that we don't know. Saw some people dancing, so I went and I danced too. There's something in that old key change made me think of you. 'Cause I need some loving, at least that's what I've been told, that the only thing that matters now is having someone you can hold, and so I'll buy you flowers, treat you like I should. I just hope you can love this woman, though I'm damaged goods. There's a home in Oklahoma. Mama came one day, she said there's something in the way that boy smiles, sure brightens up my day. So I took her for a word and I hopped on the next train. There's something in that old mountain range made me speak your name, 'cause I need some loving. At least that's what I've been told, that the only thing that matters now is that we're getting old, and so I'll buy you flowers, treat you like I should. I just hope you can love this woman. Oh, I'm damaged good. I'm damaged good.
Beautiful song. Really amazing. You mentioned that you wrote that during the quarantine. So maybe you can talk to us, and this relates to one of the questions that came in. You can talk to us about how are you inspired to create music? Do the words come first? Does the music come first? And also, the question that came in is, what role does touring play in your work? So how important is touring in developing and growing as a musician? So now in this time of pandemic, when you can't tour, what effect does that have on your work?
I think, well, I guess I'll start in order. Writing songs, I think it comes, from all different directions. I mean, sometimes I have a melody first. Sometimes I have like literally a rhyme, or like sometimes I honestly do a lot of free writing where I'm just like, I write and let my mind go, and then random stuff comes out, and then I kind of chop it up, and then I see a story kind of evolve, and then that's how it kind of, and then I put music to it. Or like this one, like I rewrote, like every single version of it was a completely different story based on stuff, it's like, I don't know, it ends up being a little bit like, I don't know, it's like taking blocks and putting them together, and then you finally like, oh, there's a song, okay, got it. So that's kind of how they come together for me, I guess. I'm trying to get more, quarantine has given me an opportunity to really work on my stuff. So I've finally have time to like sit and be bored in a way, so I can stew and actually be like, oh, that's a bad line, let me rewrite it actually. Or like, that's, like actually be a bit more of a critique of my own work. And I think touring is huge for me, especially being a New Yorker, because I mean, honestly, New York's the best place because there's all these gigs, but it's kind of the worst place because the audience is the most difficult audiences, because the New Yorkers are, I think naturally everyone's hustling and busy and they're used to having music everywhere that they're kind of like, whatever, oh, there's a band in the corner. Okay, cool, whatever. But when I tour, I get to actually really play for people more than when I'm in New York. Like, it's very rare that I do a listening gig in New York, but when I'm on tour, it's almost exclusively listening gigs. So I feel like a lot of times when I've been on tour, I kind of hone in the act, and then I go back to New York and I do it that way for a little while, and then I kind of get burnt out in New York. I go on tour again and I'm like, oh, I'm a musician again, and I can explore stuff more. And so it's huge, and not being able to do that has been very difficult because I mean, I'm just a very antsy person. I don't like being have to be in one place very long, and not being able to travel has been kind of a bummer. And I had a huge tour plan that got canceled. I was in France when quarantine started, and I had a bunch of gigs I'd booked out there, and I had to cancel half of them. Um, and I've noticed that, like, I did a gig last night at this where I am now, and it's hard because it was like my second gig during quarantine, and the one that I'd done before was a week before that, and like playing with other musicians again was hard, like, because I used to do it every night, and it's a skill that you have to learn, and I practice way more than I used to practice because of quarantine. But at the end of the day, no matter how much I practice at home, it's not the same as playing with other musicians and remembering how to do all the stuff I want to do, but also cueing the band correctly and being clear with them and worrying about the audience. And like, that's something I can't practice, that like multitasking you do live. And so not being able to do that, it's a bummer, because coming back to it, like last night, I was like, man, I'm really not as good as this as I used to be. And I want to be good at it again. And I'm scared I'm going to lose that and have to relearn it once things open, if it lasts this long, you know?
So I guess asking the rest of the bandmates too, how has the pandemic kind of affected your own music? I know each of you are creating music on your own as well. And then also, maybe in addition to that question, there's another question about international performances. You know, we talked about performing and the lack of performances in the United States. When you've performed internationally in Russia or elsewhere, you know, how does that affect you and your work? Have you performed with other musicians, or how has the different audiences affected how, you know, the reception of your music? So maybe if one of the other bandmates have any insights into that.
Sure, I'll start with that. I've done a bit of international touring with kind of like American roots bands. And it's always incredibly inspiring to see how powerful music is, that I guess I think of as kind of idiosyncratically American, or at least it came out of like the blues and American folk traditions. Obviously, the rest of the world has had time to hear it and everything. It's not like you're hearing it for the first time, but it's really cool to see the power of this music that I associate with America and, like, you know, early 20th century. It's cool seeing how much it can affect people regardless of where you are, you know. And for instance, like, I was listening to Radiolab the other day, and they said that apparently American country music, like Patsy Cline and Hank Williams, the stuff from the 40s, 50s, 60s, is hugely popular with the Aboriginal population of Australia. And I guess it makes sense, but it kind of in a way is a reinforcement of what we're doing. Like, what we're doing is important because it makes people feel good, and because it can break down barriers. And it doesn't matter that this music was quote unquote invented or like kind of came about in the United States. This is a universal language that we're all speaking. So I guess that's the answer to that question for me, yeah, you definitely see the impact, and it's pretty inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, thank you. Any other thoughts from the others about either the pandemic or your experience touring or touring internationally?
I think, to sort of add to what Ryan said, what I feel is really interesting is the different ways people hear different things becomes really clear when you go to other cultures. You know, in the United States, for instance, if you're playing, especially with something like swing music, the faster tunes is what people want to dance to, right? That's what gets people excited and gets people amped up. I was in Nigeria a few years ago, and that's not what amped them up. When the audiences there really would get up and dance to ballads, but they'd hear the rhythm differently than I would normally think of it. And so all of a sudden people are dancing to this beat that is I just never thought of before. And so it just gives you a whole different perspective on something you've been doing for a long time, so it just gives you a different look through the glass,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you want to say, Chris, anything?
Well, just to kind of touch on, you asked about how quarantine has kind of affected us musically. And yes, I've been like focusing on writing things that matter to me, I guess. It's something that just like hits maybe the emotions and that feeling of why I started playing music in the first place. Like when I heard rock and roll or whatever it may be, like I'm able to, because things have slowed down, I'm able to think, one is like, why do I want to do this? What do I like? And how can I do it? Because I feel like going back also to like living in New York, where everything is just so fast paced and there's a lot of music to be played. And if you're a versatile musician, you're able to do a lot of stuff, and you might get, and by stuff I mean a lot of different styles, you might end up playing country music, 5 nights a week. And the week prior to that, you would have never thought you would have played country music at all. So, and I mean, I love a lot of different styles. I like playing a lot of different stuff. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is that you can maybe just blink your eyes and you're a country music drummer, but that never was something I focused on, or like that's not why I started playing music. So just being able to slow down and reassess and be like, what do I like? What if I had a band, what would it be?
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
why that's what I want to feel, and that's what I've been feeling a bit. And I'm starting to think like, what do I want to do? And when this is hopefully over, how can I make that happen? So, and then I guess to add on to the touring thing, I've never toured internationally, but it's just, it was incredible. And just to see the audience reaction. And like Megg had said, there's the New Yorkers, not everyone, but it's, I think everyone's privileged enough that they can hear live music a lot. And so to play these shows in these philharmonics and have people dead silent, just focusing on what you're doing, and then when you're done, just roaring applause, it felt so great. It definitely gave me a different feeling and a different view on what I do.
Great. That's, I've heard that from other musicians, and I remember Megg telling me that when you performed at Spaso, is how amazing the Russian audiences were, how attentive and how focused on the music they were. It was just dead silent, and then the applause. And I can imagine as a musician, having that kind of attention and appreciation of your work is quite memorable. So kind of along the lines, what Chris just said about, that this kind of silence during the pandemic that is allowing you to look inward at what motivates you. We have a question from Anya. What inspires you, and who are your favorite singers and songwriters? So maybe we could start from Megg, and whoever else wants to jump in, feel free. But Megg, what inspires you, or what singers inspire you?
I think, but the first place I kind of got inspiration for doing music in general was like from some of like the songwriters of like the 60s and 70s. It's kind of what my dad did. He was a songwriter in New York, and I think I got into music almost like therapeutically in that like I needed an outlet to, get my teenage angst out or something. So I just started writing, and I always was really into, just I was really into philosophy and writers from the 50s and 70s in France and all this kind of like wordy stuff. And so I was really inspired by like Leonard Cohen and I don't know, like that era kind of stuff. And less Bob Dylan at that time. Now I really like Bob Dylan, but I don't know, the really wordy stuff. And so that's when I kind of got into writing. And now and I don't know, to me all my favorites are people who are very human and like it's like Thor said, playing your personality. And so I think other ones for me for jazz is Billie Holiday for sure. And then other women right now that are really inspiring me are Judy Sill and Karen Dalton. They're both like that same era of kind of dark songwriters and very, I don't know, poetic writing. And I think that those are the most inspiring for me. It's people who are writing and creating and singing about human experience in a personal way. Even if you're singing someone else's song, like Karen Dalton does a lot of covers. She does on her records, but there's something so Karen Dalton about the covers that's so real. And I really like that kind of stuff. That's always what hits me the most.
Great. Anyone else want to share like who has inspired you? What musicians or other influences?
I've been strangely going through a Radiohead phase that I've never had before.
The pandemic does that to you.
Yeah, it's time.
That's a group that, of course, I mean, you can't really exist in the modern world and not know some Radiohead songs, but I never really paid attention to them. And so during this period of quiet, I decided to just sort of go down a rabbit hole. And what a cool band. I don't really need to tell anybody that.
So here's a question, because I read about your band and it says that you focus on early jazz, like jazz of the 1920s and 30s. For those of us who don't know jazz really well, can you describe what that style is and how does it differ from the jazz of later years, like the mid 20th century, like when it really became popular here in Russia, for example? So what are the elements of early jazz?
I think for me, it's a singing thing, obviously. I think the music in general, I first was drawn to the earlier stuff because I just found I'm a bit more like the folk rock and roll-y kind of fun stuff that I like. It's a bit more spunky and energetic. And I also, the scene in New York that play it, it's just livelier and a little bit less heady. I like heady jazz too, but for what I want to do, I like to have the fun stuff. And so I think, and more technically, harmonically, it's a bit simpler. The arrangements are a bit less, I don't know, there's a lot more like specific arrangements in the earlier stuff, and there's a lot of group improvisation, but it's much more, it's not like weird harmonies like bebop. It's all pre that stuff. But vocally is, I think, what I would know more about. You can maybe ask them more about the music stuff, but vocally, I like it because I feel like in the earlier singing, there was a lot more, singing for me, what I started learning was early blues stuff like Bessie Smith and Ma Rainey, and that kind of transitions into Billie Holiday, and also the singers, the singers that were doing kind of the more Broadway stuff like Al Bowley, they were really singing very emotionally and beautifully and poetically, but really singing straight melody. And then the blues singers are singing in this like really soulful way, and it's really not as much about the melody, about the feeling. And then when you get to Billie, which is to me like the pinnacle of like the stuff that I'm trying to do and the eras I'm trying to do, it's like she's saying very soulful and with feeling in that emotional, very human way, but was also singing, I don't know, jazz stuff and improvising slightly, but it wasn't so, I don't know, sometimes the more modern stuff for me vocally, I love it because it's technically amazing and it's fantastic and it's so jumping everywhere and they do such amazing things, but it doesn't hit me in that human way. And I feel like the early stuff, it is technically difficult and challenging as a musician, and it's still jazz and it's improving and it's fun for that reason. but it's got a bit, I think it's closer to the blues and has a bit more of the human aspect to it and the fun, that kind of thing. So that's kind of what draws me to that period the most, I think.
Great explanation using words when you when you're not actually listening to the music. That's interesting. So I wanted to actually ask Chris this because I know you're considered a kind of an expert of drumming from like the era of the 20s and the 30s. I don't know if you can verbalize what that means exactly.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned earlier that I found a love for antique drums, and I forgot to touch on that. So perfect timing. It's I don't know. I didn't see this one coming because like I've mentioned, I was like a big rock and roll fan. And that's what I thought I would be when I was younger. So to play 20s and 30s jazz on these old drums, I've been doing it for, I don't know, about 5 or 6 years now. But anyway, it's for me, getting inside this music's been fun because on these early recordings, from the 19 teens into the 1920s specifically, it's hard to tell what the drummer is doing because of the recording limitation. I think in a lot of cases the drums were so loud that they'd have to play really quiet as opposed to the rest of the instruments in the band. And there might be some other reasons behind that, but essentially you just hear like a splash cymbal like every couple of bars or even less than that. So I just not really knowing what people are doing on the recording and then coming to New York where people have learned from the people that did it, that learned from the people that did it before them. That's been really interesting because then you can start to infer what might be going on in a particular section in a song. And then I guess on a side note, just the antique drums are so fun for me because in that style, the drum set's essentially maybe one of the newest inventions within music. I mean, in the 20th century is when the drum set was born. So people were just trying new things, making crazy inventions to make weird sounds. And so that's a really exciting part about this music for me too. In a lot of ways, I feel like it's kind of the rock and roll of the 20s because there's a lot of just kind of energy behind it, like Meg was saying. And people are just being inventive and I don't know, that's the fun part about it for me.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to realize there's almost like a genealogy of these instruments, and I never knew that there was an actual different type of drum back then, but really fascinating. So we only have a few minutes left. I know, Meg, you prepared a second song, so maybe if you could share with us your another song if you're willing. And then after that, I'd like each of you just to share some parting words. I asked you to maybe think about, what words of wisdom would you like to share with Russian musicians today? So Meg, would you be able to share one more song?
Sure. I got a right to sing the blues. I got a right to feel low down. I got a right to sit around all along the river. A certain man in this old town keeps dragging my poor heart around. Oh, all I see for me is misery. I got a right to sing the blues.
ride all along the river. Soon the deep blue sea will be calling me. It must be love, say what you choose. I got a right to sing the blues. I got a right to sing the blues. I got a right to feel low down. I got a right to sit around all along that river. Oh, that old river. I started man in this town. He keeps on dragging my poor heart all around, and all I see for me is misery. Oh, I got a right to sing the blues. I got a right to feel low down. I got a right to sit around all along the river. Soon that deep blue sea will be calling me. It must be love, say what you choose. I got a right to sing the blues, baby.
Another amazing song. Your voice is just gorgeous. So we'll give you a little break. Maybe we'll start with Ryan. If you could just share with us, any words of wisdom that might inspire Russian musicians as we kind of leave and finish up this live stream.
Totally. Just remember that, I don't know, from my experience, it's taken a lot of work, but I've always done the work because I've believed in what I'm doing, and I have a love for the music and the saxophone. And the fact of the matter is, if you want to become a professional musician, it takes a perseverance, because once you get to a certain point, there's the question marks and the difficulties never really go away. And so the only thing that really keeps me going is the fact that I love what I'm doing and that I believe in it. And that means that it's not hard for me to like put the saxophone together each day and play it, because I love it so much. And that's the only thing you got, you're not going to have job stability. You're not going to have a lot of money. And so you have to be doing it for the love of it, and just let that guide you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think that's kind of universal words of wisdom for musicians and artists alike, like anyone pursuing the cultural arts. You have to have a passion, like you said. Okay, Thor, how about you? What words of wisdom would you like to share?
I would say, at least, again, I can only go on my own experiences, but I think it's always better to spend the time to learn your instrument as opposed to learning your instrument and learning music as opposed to learning a style of music. You can gravitate towards styles of music that you like, but by learning your instrument and learning even just basic fundamentals of music, which is just how you relate to it, will come out in those styles, as opposed to just learning a quote unquote style. And another quick little one is just be everybody. I know it seems weird and I feel silly saying it, but that's the best way to play with more people, because you're never going to learn more than you are from playing with other people.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. That, like we said before, that web, that network of people, and that seemed to be how your band connected and got together as well. So thanks. And Chris, how about you?
Yeah, sure. I'd say it's kind of piggybacking on what Thor said, but I think, we all have particular music that we love or like or want to do, but I think it's really important to be able to listen to just about anything. There's so much music in this world, and I spent a lot of my younger years turning my nose up at music that I thought was not cool, or, you know, for one reason or another. But later in life, I've realized how important it is to listen to things, and you may not like it, but I think there's always something to take away from whatever you might be listening to. And I think also just if you want to do music, find the thing that you love and really do it. I guess that's all I have.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know if you can say it, you know, any better than that. Just find what you love and then do it. That's a great motivating thought. Okay, so we'll end with Meg. Any last words to our Russian audience?
I would say, I mean, I'm probably speak to vocalists more because I'm a vocalist. That's what I know. But maybe this relates to other people. But I'd say be you. That's a big thing that, I don't know, whenever I see vocalists that I don't dig, it's because I feel them being phony or something, or they're not, or they're trying to sound like this. And I think you should learn from your greats. All of my best vocal teachers were Billie Holiday and Anita O'Day and Patsy Cline because I memorized and learned them. But you have to try to just do you. You're never gonna be the best Patsy Cline impersonator, and you're never gonna be Billie Holiday, but you will be the best you, no matter what, if you just try to do that. So anytime I feel like I've been bummed out, it's because I wasn't doing that. And the more I do that, the happier I am with the product. So that's what I would say. Be you.
So it's kind of fitting that you said that, because that's exactly what I thought when I was listening to your music, as just how unique the sound is. And you can tell it comes from you and your background and your influences. So I think that's very fitting. Just be you and encourage people to pursue, you know, their own passion and, you know, their own unique style. So I wanted to just thank you all so much for your time. I mean, we appreciate the many weeks that you were here in Russia, and then that you would come and rejoin us today, tell us about your experiences and help inspire us, you know, during this time of the pandemic. So it was really inspiring, and we really appreciate your time and hope to see you again in Russia.
I hope so too.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.